Okay guys, welcome back. This is going to be the installation of the TA in this 3788. I just received the warranted TA in the mail this afternoon. So we've got to get this out of the box and basically swap places with it on the cherry picker. Okay, let's have a look here. So here's how the new TA comes. Notice I've got the hose clamp on there that keeps this outer bell from sliding off the shaft and exposing our sprag inside. Now this is a super TA as they call it, because on the back side we've got 4 clutch discs in there instead of the factory 3. That helps them to last a little bit longer, keep them from failing quite so often on the direct side. So there's our TA driven gear, and that puppy goes down on the counter shaft. Okay, so up here we basically got to swap places with this one, and we've got to get the bearing cage off the back and get it installed on that one, and have to get our hose clamp inside there put on so it can't potentially come off. Once we get that done, we can set that whole assembly and the driven gear that goes there back in the box and get it shipped out so they can get the warranty part done. The driven gear is that painted green one. It's the very front gear. So here's our big nut. So it's the very first gear that goes on this shaft. Then we've got to get that disassembled and get that put back in the box. Get it ready to go in the mail. I thought I might stop here and give you guys a pointer. It's easiest to get those, obviously the other end of these teeth, but those teeth to slide through those clutch discs when the TA is sitting vertical. A dual rim works pretty well. And as you're dropping this down in here, you're going to probably have to pull this back off a couple, 2 or 3 times and kind of line up those little teeth. Try to get them as centered as you can. And then as this shaft drops through each one of those plates, count them. You want to make sure you count 4 drops. And it's going to be real tight on the last one. The last one doesn't drop in very much. It's just right on the tip of those teeth up top. Actually, it'll be down below, but those teeth will just barely be in that disc. It's just going to be right there. So you won't get much of a drop, but make sure when you count, as you drop that thing in, you count 4 clunks. So anyway, there she is. Gonna get our keeper bolt in place, and we can flip this thing back over without it falling back out. Okay. Okay, we've got it set in there and removed our keeper off the back. We put the thin shim gasket in there, and we're supposed to have 5 to 15 thousandths end play in the TA shaft. Well, we don't quite have that. Like, pull on it, we can reach just 5, back to 0. But when I let go of it, it's not really staying at 5. We're more like 4. Okay. Yeah, so she's just a little tight. So we're going to pull that TA back out and put the other, actually we'll take that shim out. And right here is where it is. Okay. Where did it go? I'd show you what they look like. There they is. Okay, there's our old one that was in there. Here's the other new one. And this is the thicker one of the two. So I guess it's going together without any shims in there. And it just goes inside between the back of that cage and the housing. It sits in there. So we're going to pull that TA back out and try it without the shim in there. That's where this stand really comes in handy, because you can just rotate that thing up. And then of course the cable cherry picker, that makes it slick. Woo! Man, it just started downpouring. That's kind of cool. Well, it makes me glad I got a nice dry shop to work in. Okay, back to this, guys. That bottom shaft going in, it will be pretty free and easy to wiggle that shaft through the front bearing and through the gears over to about here. Now this spacer and this gear are real tight getting in there. And then you kind of wiggle the shaft, you know, and kind of get her stuck through there. But once you get to this back bearing, they kind of go in pretty difficult. So usually I have the transmission stood up the other way so the shaft's wanting to fall in, and then assist with a big metal driver and a little bit of a touching of the hammer, not getting carried away, but just enough to help push her through. And because this is a left-hand thread, it does not have the locking collar, doesn't have the groove in the shaft for the locking collar anyhow. And so that's that. Another thing to note is to leave these bolts in with your big bearing cage on there, otherwise you'll push that bearing out, and then you got to drive the shaft back in to get the bearing on, and so on. So leave this big collar on while you're driving your shaft in through the bearing, and then make sure you get that guy good and tight. I forget what the exact torque is, but usually I just stick so I'll stick the rest of the gears in, lock it into 2 gears, and then I take the big 3/4 inch 4-foot bar or socket and ratchet, 4-foot ratchet, and I'll bounce on that guy till she's good and tight. It's some ridiculous amount. It's like 400 or 600 or something. I could look, but we're not to that point yet. Anyway, so there's our TA put in, installed. Everything's done on the TA. The bottom shaft is in, it's tight. You can see around the front. There she is. Needle bearings back into place. Now we're ready to go back in with the top shaft. And it's pretty simple. Pull all the gears off the shaft, slide the shaft in till your collar's sitting tight, and kind of wiggle the gears in one at a time, and they're pretty simple. They don't have big collar spacers like that, but they do have them shim washers in there. We got to make sure we get those in the right spot. There she is in all her glory. So here's the gears in order in which they go on the shaft. I don't know if I can do this one-handed or not. Let's give it a try. So the big shaft's got to go in, obviously. We're going to sink it up as close to here as we can, but not quite all the way. You can see that wear right there. Maybe you can see that. That's because when this tractor was originally brought to me, the TA was out, but also this is your first gear, and it would not stay in. I think it wouldn't stay in first gear, whatever the case. And this shim washer here is the first thing on your shaft. It was missing, so that was allowing this gear to ride way too close to this bearing cage, and that's what she was eating, that bearing cage up right there. So we slapped a new out of the junkyard, slapped one of these in there, shim washer, and got her proper put back into place, and she quit slipping out of first. But anyway, let's get this guy stuffed in here. Okay, nope, takes 2 hands. So there's our shim washer right down there, and then our first gear, and first gear collar and shift collar. I think that's what that is. Alright, so now I got to wiggle this guy back out, taper, give her an angle just a little bit to get the next couple gears on. There we go. All back in place, and I've just got these screws run up by hand here, and I've got to snug them all up yet, torque them. You can see the shim washers in there. They're supposed to be, I forget the exact number, but there's supposed to be a little bit of play in this shaft, and it's going to tighten up a little bit more. But anyway, when that back collar, that shim washer was missing, this gear floating around, basically where she meshes up with the shift collar, the collar wasn't staying fully engaged because that gear was walking backwards, and that's how it was falling out of gear, as they say. This is right there is where she meets up. See if I can get her to spin. See where they meet up right there. And this gear, this collar is supposed to mesh these two together. And so if that gear is floating back there, then it'd be in for a minute and then it would be out, just as you can see there, not quite meshing up. So anyway, now let's go ahead and get these torqued back up. Throw this back into first gear. And I'm going to call it a wrap for tonight, guys. It's getting late. As you said, I just had some rain come through. That's pretty nice. Anyway, so we'll work on this again tomorrow. Get the shift cover put back on, get our MCV tubes, and then nothing to those. Those just pop in, get them in their spots, put the MCV back on, and we'll be ready to throw her back on the tractor. Okay, let's call it her night. Got the MCV back on and the top cover back on. Now we're just buttoning back up the starter bolts. And that's pretty well it, guys. This is going to be the end of this video, because this is pretty much now just the reverse process of taking the transmission out of the tractor as the previous video. So, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate everybody's comments and questions. And until the next video, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.